An unlikely sight,
He basically had to drain the swamp.
an uncompromising vision.
He wants to control everything.
Iron ore, timber, and rubber go in.
Integration is key.
A new car comes out in 48 hours flat.
You can't conceive of how complex a job that was.
Henry Ford's River Rouge plant. I'm Stuart Varney, and this is American Built. Henry Ford's moving assembly line revolutionized automotive manufacturing. But like other game-changing technologies, its success created a whole new set of challenges. The story starts here at Ford's sixth-floor factory in Highland Park, Michigan.
The Highland Park plant was the plant where Henry Ford perfected the assembly line. A Model T is rolling off the line every 30 seconds or so.
The idea of the Model T was that if you made enough of them and made them efficiently enough, then anyone could afford one. And of course it worked. The automobile industry became the engine of American industry.
300,000 Model Ts were built in 1914, but the forecast was over 2 million.
So Ford had to figure out how to build more cars, a lot more.
The Highland Park plant was really the prototype, the model for a plant that was thought of as a machine in and of itself, a machine for making machines.
But it became clear that prototype had a design flaw.
Henry Ford couldn't build enough Model Ts at the Highland Park plant because of the way it was designed. Yes, the assembly line is brilliant, but the building itself is vertical.
The logic of an assembly line is that it's one long line along which you assemble things, right? So that meant that you wanted as much horizontal space as possible. Highland Park was 6 stories.
It was just much more practical to be able to do that on one level. So if he's going to do it on one level, he's going to need more land.
But Highland Park was in the middle of Metro Detroit.
Highland Park is landlocked. All of the property around there was developed.
Henry Ford said, I need a big, wide open space as big as the American prairie where I can build America's car.
Dearborn, Michigan. Ford bought 1,300 acres of marshland and began to plan the ultimate factory along the Rouge River.
At that time, it was out in the country. It's about 6 miles from downtown Detroit.
But it was near where he had grown up. And his idea was he was going to manufacture in a completely different way. There's going to be production, but it's also going to be raw materials coming in.
Now Ford had a depth problem.
The Rouge River, when Henry Ford's looking at it, is only 5 to 8 feet deep, very narrow, and totally impractical with several bends in the river. But as long as they could dredge and straighten the Rouge River, it made some sense.
But that job was too big, even for the Ford Motor Company. It would take the government. But why do it?
And then World War I happens.
When a German sub sank the passenger ship Lusitania, America geared up for war.
Submarines are one of the most dangerous things facing America during World War I.
And Henry Ford proposes to the U.S. government to build 500 submarine chasers at the Rouge site. And the U.S. government gets involved.
The government agreed to dredge the Rouge. Henry Ford agreed to build an Eagle boat factory there. River depth problem solved. Now he had a land problem.
So they're going to put a 1,500-foot-long building on marshland. And, you know, it's going to sink.
And to build it, he basically had to drain the swamp. He had to build all these pylons there. He had to pour massive amounts of concrete.
So they've got to put pilings in every 8 feet in each direction in order to support the weight.
To design the factory, Ford turned to his trusted collaborator, architect Albert Kahn.
Albert Kahn was an amazing character. No schooling, no training, but he was the factory man. You know, you had lots of different titans of industry designing cars. There was one guy who designed all the factories, and that was Albert Kahn.
So Kahn envisioned this very horizontal building where the ships would start on one side, and as the plates are applied the whole way down, at the end, a finished boat would be able to come out the other end of the building.
The long, low design sparked another bright idea.
Kahn says, no more concrete, steel. You want to let as much light in? Well, guess what? With steel, you can have a very thin skin, and almost all of it can be glass.
The Eagle Boat Factory was called the B Building, but Kahn designed it for more than boats.
He makes sure that the building is laid out with cranes along the roof line from one end to the other, but also laid out in such a way that it can be easily converted to automotive production.
And after 60 Eagle boats and a victory in Europe, that's exactly what happened.
Ford bought the building from the U.S. government for $180,000, a fraction of what it cost to build originally.
Henry Ford then began massive expansion at the Rouge. Building after building after building followed after World War I.
But Ford's investors were not as excited about the Rouge as Henry was.
Henry was taking all the profits from the Model T and applying them to building this giant industrial plant.
Two of his most influential shareholders were brothers named Horace and John Dodge.
The Dodge brothers actually owned 10% of the Ford Motor Company.
But even more worrisome was that the Dodgers supplied many of the Model T's parts.
When Henry Ford announced that he was going to stop paying dividends, the Dodge brothers sued him.
Though Ford lost the lawsuit, he didn't tap the brakes on his plan. Instead, he floored it.
It was then that Henry Ford decided that he needed to control 100% of the Ford Motor Company.
To take back the reins, Ford made a bold play.
He announced that he was resigning from the Ford Motor Company, putting his only child, his son Edsel Ford, in as president, 25-year-old Edsel, and moving to California to build a cheaper car that would undersell the Model T.
The gambit worked. Investors looked to dump their shares, and Ford was happy to oblige.
He bought everybody out, and he took the Ford Motor Company back private.
And now he wants to become completely independent.
Underscore completely, and that would require a factory like no other. Raw materials would float up the river to a mammoth single-level facility where they could be forged into steel, smelted into iron, milled into frames, molded into tires, and melted into glass. All these components would move directly to the assembly line. Ford wanted to go from raw materials to finished automobile in 2 days.
He put his dream into practice. He was going to change the way that manufacturing took place.
He risked his business building River Rouge. This was a huge bet.